want to welcome you to the Midweek Motivation. Today we are really blessed. We're going to have a chat to Cathy, who is the secretary of Sweetwaters. She drives us nuts at times in the office, but we really love her, and I'm really excited to have a chat to you, Cathy. So welcome to Midweek Motivation.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you.
I know she's really nervous, so we're asking you to give lots of likes and lots of comments and let her know what you think. Just show us some love. So, Cathy, just to get started off, let's chat about, can you tell us a little about your upbringing, your childhood, and tell us some stories. I know you've told me stories before. It's always great. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, I was born in Lady Chancellor Hospital in Salisbury, Rhodesia, which is Harare, Zimbabwe now, but at that time Salisbury, Rhodesia, in 1960, and I was what the Afrikaans people would say, a laat lammetjie, I think that's it, because my mother was 47 when I was born.
Sure.
And I had an older sister, 25 years older than myself, and my brother was about 22 years older, and then another brother, Clancy, who was about 5 years older. So I was really the laat lammetjie. Grew up in Salisbury, Rhodesia, went to Little Whitcomb Primary School and Hatfield High School. My father, he was an alcoholic, so there were some quite dark days, but my mother did her very best with having an alcoholic husband. Sure. And having a laat lammetjie, but she did her very best. And I grew up mainly with my brother Clancy, because my sister was married by the time I was born. In fact,
Sure.
She had her first child. And my brother George, he got married when I was about 3 or 4. So it was just really my brother Clancy and I at home.
So you had a lot of brothers and sisters to take you around to places.
Yeah, not too much, but anyway, yeah.
And what were some of the memories you have of growing up in Rhodesia those times?
Yeah.
I mean, people always talk about the memories. What was it like?
Yeah.
You spoke about a lot of the fond memories you had. What are some of the memories you have of growing up in those times?
It was a beautiful country. It really was such an amazing country to grow up in and go to school, and such a safe place. I could just remember up and down the street, there was a huge big bush at the end of our little street, and all the kids would go there and play on foofy slides and have fun like that, whereas now you don't want your kids going off into a little bush on their own. And we were young, we would walk to the shops as young little kids, and it was just so safe. It was a safe place to grow up in. It was really, really beautiful.
I know we're going to kind of jump around a bit, but at what age did you move to South Africa at, and were there big differences between the two countries when you moved across?
Yeah, definitely. Zimbabwe then had gone under we were under sanctions in the beginning with Rhodesia, but Zimbabwe just got their independence in 1980. It was still good. Things were still good. About 1990 is when we moved to Joburg, and it was mainly because of the schooling. Schooling had gone down quite a lot, and our kids were very young. So in 1990 Terry was offered a position, and he took the position to move to Joburg in 1990. So it was very, very different, especially. And then, of course, 2 years later, we moved here to Durban, and being in Durban by the sea, and being in Zimbabwe is a landlocked country, so that was sort of a treat being near the ocean. It was really a treat coming to South Africa after Zimbabwe, but very, very different.
And I think a lot of people might not know this. This is one of those stories that people might not know. Yeah. So we let a little secret out the bag, that you were a calendar model.
Oh yes, of course.
Tell us about that story.
No. When we were first married, we were married in 1979, and Terry worked for the airline then, Air Rhodesia, and we were transferred to Vic Falls. And so he was working at the airport, and I was looking for work, and found a job at the crocodile farm. So part of my job was doing the tours around the crocodile farm. So we'd have all the groups of UTC, United Touring Company, would bring busloads of tourists, and I'd have to take them on a tour around the crocodile farm and hold a baby croc and tell them all about the baby crocodile, and go through the whole cycle of the crocs. And so the Zimbabwe Tourist Board did one of those flip calendars. So I think I was the I think I was the April calendar girl.
We'll try to pull that picture up one day and show
Yeah, a
everybody.
picture of me holding the baby croc.
So Cathy, you've been speaking a bit about Terry. Terry's an awesome man of God. Really, I think he inspires so many people with just who he is. How did you and T. Cammy tell us the story of how you met, a little bit about your background?
He had a good friend, Grant, and they worked together in customs. And it was just about 3 months before my 16th birthday. Grant happened to introduce me to his friend Terry. And Terry at that time was actually doing his national service.
And didn't he have a cool beard at that time?
Not when I met him, a bit later though, but he was doing his national service. So this young, handsome man in his army uniform just swept me off my feet. And he was a gift from God. He was then and he still is.
And in terms of your family, your kids and that type of thing, how many kids do you have and how old are your kids?
Yeah, we were married for 6 years. We were living in Vic Falls for the first 2 years. We always say we had a six-year honeymoon. And then Kaylee arrived, our beautiful daughter Kaylee, in 1986. And then in 1988 we had our amazing son Kyle. So we've just got the 2 children.
And I think we'll chat about this just now. I know that you love dogs. I think everyone knows you love dogs. But besides church and dogs, your love for dogs, what other things do you enjoy doing? What other things would you consider to be your hobbies?
Gardening. I love gardening. I love crocheting. Yeah, so I'm always pottering around in the garden and just put together a bit of a veggie patch. And I enjoy crocheting and just spending time with family. To me, that's the greatest thing, is just being around the braai with my family, spending time with them.
And then, how did you come to know Christ as Lord and Savior? Well, it must be quite a long time ago. And how did that journey look for you?
Yeah, we'd done a contract in Zambia, and then we just got back to by the time it was Zimbabwe. Just got back to Zimbabwe, and Carl was born in Zimbabwe. Kaylee was born while we were still in Zambia. And I just felt this sort of overwhelming responsibility bringing up 2 kids. And I felt, I need some sort of divine intervention to help with this task of bringing up these 2 children. So a friend, as we arrived in Zimbabwe from Zambia, this friend invited us to their church. Terry had been brought up Catholic, and he had his bit of church and wasn't doing church anymore. As soon as he had sort of left school, he stopped going to church. So, but I hadn't really been brought up. My parents weren't Christian, so I didn't really have much of a Christian background. But she invited us to this little church, and I took the kids along. Terry didn't want to come, and it really intrigued me. For the first time, I was starting to hear this gospel message, which I never really understood. And I told Terry all about it, and he wasn't keen, but he had a half-brother, Alan, who was attending the Baptist church. He was actually an elder at the Baptist church, and he had also been on Terry's case, inviting us to church. So eventually Terry said, let's rather go as a family, but I don't want to go to a happy clappy church, which this was. Let's just go to the Baptist church. So we started going to the little Baptist church in Chisipiti. And that was the first time that we had really heard the gospel and understood it, and responded to an invitation to accept Christ at 2 different times in the time that we were at that church. It was just within a couple of months we both responded to the gospel, accepted Christ.
And it's quite a difficult question to unpack. How would you say, especially for yourself, as someone who maybe didn't grow up as in a with parents who went to church, that how would you say that the gospel has changed your life over the last years? Because I know you have had challenges in your Christian journey. It hasn't always been easy, but how would you say that the gospel has changed you, and why do you feel that with all the challenges that you've been through, that you're still sitting here as a person who believes in Christ with all the challenges you've been through?
I think I've seen God's faithfulness to come through for us. And when I look back on my life, even when we first met and we weren't Christians, I can see God's hand in my life even before I accepted Him. Scripture talks about, when we are unfaithful, He is faithful, and I've seen His faithfulness. And with all the challenges, with the disappointments, I know, that thing, to whom shall you go? When the disciples wanted to go, and Jesus said, are you also going to leave me? And He said, well, to whom shall we go? You hold the keys. And that's how I feel. There is nowhere else to go. So even the times where you have doubts and disappointments and struggles, there's nowhere else to go. It's only Christ.
And then in terms of preachers and authors that speak into your life, obviously besides our own pastors, who are some people that inspire you, that speak into your life? Who are some authors and maybe some books that have inspired you over the years? What are some of those things?
I think Ravi Zacharias. I love Ravi Zacharias. Sadly, he's passed now, but the word lives on, and I really love listening to his messages. I've read so many different authors over the years. You go through different times in your Christian journey where you're needing different things, and I think of the book Blue Like Jazz. I can't even remember the author now. Maybe you'll remember Blue Like Jazz. Yeah, I loved that book, and that helped me a lot in my journey.
It's just interesting. And you've been at Sweetwaters for many, many years. You've been through many pastoral changes. So how did you end up getting involved in Sweetwaters first and foremost? And tell us some of the memories you have. I think, especially for some of the people that have been in the church for many years, some of those memories might just make them think back, that was awesome. And for some people who might not know a little bit about Sweetwaters, it might just be nice to hear a little bit about the history of the church from your perspective.
When we arrived from Joburg here in Durban, we were in the Baptist church in Joburg. We were baptized there. We arrived here, and we automatically went to Toti Baptist, and we were there for about 2 years. But then we just started church hopping a little bit, and we found Sweetwaters. I was working actually as secretary for the Presbyterian church. They were looking for a secretary, and they didn't mind a secretary not attending their church. So I was working at the Presbyterian church, but we came across Sweetwaters, and it was such a warm, loving little fellowship. I think there was probably even less than 200 people when we arrived, and that was when it was situated in Kingsway and AMANZIMTOTI. And Pastor Ferdy and Rhea Warwick were the pastoral couple. And I remember with fondness, like Sam and Joyce Antle, Frida and George Glenister, really fond memories. And Sharon and Russell Armstrong, Ken and Joy Rowett, they were running the Growing in Grace discipleship course. So Pastor Ferdy, I remember the one Sunday shortly after we arrived, said, he wants everyone in the church to do the Growing in Grace and speak to Ken and Joy. So we were new to the church, so we spoke to Ken and Joy and joined their little home cell where they were running Growing in Grace. And we were with them for about 7 years. So that's where a lot of our discipleship took place, with Ken and Joy in their home every Friday night for about 7 years.
And then you've been part of many small groups. You and Tika have even led small groups over the years. How have small groups or cell groups played a part in your spiritual growth and your spiritual development? Why do you, there might be someone who's saying, why must I be part of a cell group? In your opinion, how has it helped you to grow as a Christian?
Well, I think initially being with Ken and Joy for that 7 years, it was really a good foundation that we received from them. And then, after being there for a while, we just felt we're going to start our own cell. And we spoke to them, and they said, that's what it's about. So they really they prayed for us and sent us on our way, and we started our home cell, invited people in the neighborhood who were from different churches, and they joined our home cell. And for about 7 years, we took a group of about 13 people through. We actually did the Growing in Grace discipleship course with them, and some of them were from the Anglican Church and NGO Church, but they were in our neighborhood. We just invited them, and we took them through Rick Warren, the Purpose Driven Life, and then we ran Alpha with them as well. And yeah, and then, you know, after that we sort of started running Alpha at the church, and in between the Alphas we linked up with Jill and Lester Povey and joined their home cell for a while in between the Alpha courses. And I just found, you know, in a small group you get to know people, you get to know their stories, they become family to you. You know, it's a place where you can ask questions, and yeah, just have that sense of community. And I really just think belonging to a small group is what makes church. It really does.
But it's interesting, a lot of those people who you've shared that were part of your cell group all the way back then, whether you were in their cell or they were in your cell, a lot of those people are still your people that your friends today.
That's right, definitely. You know, you maintain those friendships, you know, over the years because you've had a close bond with them.
And I know it's a difficult season right now with this whole COVID-19. We're not able to connect with people, but I think, you know, for anyone out there, if they are in the church and they feel disconnected, I do think, you know, get involved in a life group. I think that is where you're going to connect with people, get to know people. You're never going to get to a place of deeper connection by just coming on a Sunday to church.
You're quite right.
A big part of your life is, and we hear about this all the time, is EduPaul. And I know we read about it in the newspaper all the time. It's on Facebook, and it's an amazing it's an amazing project. So can you tell us a little about the project? How did you end up getting involved in EduPaul, and you know, what impact do you think it has had?
Yeah, look, I've always loved dogs. You know, we were married for 6 years and we had 4 dogs before we had 2 kids. And I always say that unconditional love you get from a dog. You know, besides that unconditional love with a parent and a child, I think it's only God and dogs, unconditional love. And I volunteered at AMANZIMTOTI SPCA as a dog walker on a Saturday morning, just taking dogs for a walk. And I noticed there's a lot of kids coming from the township with their dogs, just hanging around the gate there, and SPCA would help them with food and vaccinations and medical care. But the state of the dogs was always just, they weren't looking good, and it really broke my heart. Being a dog lover, it really broke my heart. And so I approached the manager, Tracy at SPCA, and asked, would I be able to start maybe a little education program? And she chatted to the committee and gave me the go-ahead. So we developed a program called EduPaul, and it's basically an 8-week canine care program, and we take 12 kids through this 8-week program, teaching them everything there is to know about dogs. It's like an alpha course for dogs. And then they graduate. And
they even get a meal.
Yeah, they even get a meal. All the dogs get fed, yeah. Alpha course for dogs. So yeah, so we run that, and just got a whole bunch of volunteers together, mainly from kids who have done the class and they have a passion for dogs, and so they've just joined and become volunteers. So it's a great team, and yeah, we just see you know, how the light bulb goes on and kids are starting to understand dogs in a different light. And to be quite honest, the reason I did it is my love for dogs, not for kids. But yet it's amazing how God turns things to work for himself and for his glory, in that the kids' lives have been affected, and even the families of those kids. So yeah, and it's been great to see the impact on the children, on their families, and even their communities.
I remember at the beginning you told me when you were almost complaining about the way that some of the township dogs were treated. And Carl said something to you. Like, what did he say to you about when you were complaining about it? He said something to you?
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to sometimes give the kids a slap, you know, because they weren't looking after their dogs. And he said, well, they don't know any better. He says it all starts with the kids' education. So, you know, unless you're going to show them and teach them a different way, it's going to carry on. So it was actually Carl who inspired me to start this. And yeah, we've seen the results of it, really have.
And we've spoken over the last couple of weeks, we've spoken about the importance, you know, obviously, and just as before we say the next thing, it's important that you're connected to the local church, that you're serving in the local church, and I think that's all important, to be plugged into the local church. That's where everything else flows out of. But, you know, your impact has gone beyond the church. And I've always said to you before this, I think one of the things, the first thing I said to you, it's, yeah, you were doing this for the dogs, but people's lives have been impacted. I just think back to the fact that people during this pandemic, and I know there's something you wouldn't, you've had some of those kids who have come, have got fed during this pandemic through being connected to what you've done. And why do you feel that, yes, it is important to be involved in a church ministry, but it's also important to, when you see injustice, when you see things in the world that break your heart, why do you think it's important that we as Christians look for opportunities to get involved and to make a difference in the world?
Yeah, definitely. I think my first years in the Christian world and in the church, I was so inward focused on just church people and church stuff. And it's good. It really is good. But I think that was my love for Alpha as well, because it was reaching out. But, I just think, people, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. And I often think that world is not just people, it's creation. It's God's, God's creation. The other scripture that speaks of the whole of creation is groaning, and so I feel that it's not just about us here. It's about God's creation, his environment. And so getting involved in groups outside of the church, you're making an impact in things that matter, and you're meeting people of different faiths, and you're able to just share with them and hear their stories, and hopefully impact and shine a light there too. There's amazing groups going in Toti, and I just feel that Christians should be involved in things beyond their four walls, even what you're doing with bird life. I know there's a group that's recently started called Snare Aware, and they're going and finding snares in the bush, and these people who just put the snares in the bush, and these animals die a torturous death. And I just think, I think all Christians should be involved in stuff like that, because, we're the ones who are called to make a difference. So, I think it's important.
And I think it goes back a lot to what Pastor Nishan's been preaching about over the last 2 weeks from the book of James, about the fact that our faith has to be practical.
Yes.
It's no use just coming to church and having a profession of faith. It has to be something that's practically lived out. And I just think there was a Rick Warren message at one of the GLS conferences. We spoke about that, the story of Moses, about just the staff. What is in your hand?
Yes.
And I think, I think in this season here, it's being plugged into the house, being plugged into what God is doing, but also starting to look and say, what can I do? What can I do to make an impact? And I think, I think one thing about the EduPaul story, as I've seen it, is you took a small step.
Yes.
And I think even today, you're amazed with what has happened as a result. And I think, so that's just my encouragement. And just, the last question I want to ask you is just, a lot of people are going through difficulty in this time. A lot of people are going through challenges. I know even for you guys with Terry and Carl's business, there's been maybe tighter times. What is your suggestion? What would be your encouragement for people during this season?
I think we can see a lot of good things come out of something that is not so good. People have sort of, as they say, reinvented themselves and found different ways of doing things. I mean, even we've got a different way of doing church. And I mean, even with Terry and Carl, with their company, they are looking at different ideas and expanding in that way. And, I even think even with EduPaul, we were meeting every Saturday morning. We can no longer meet. And in the beginning, I thought that's terrible, because we were just about to start another class with a whole lot of kids registered. But through that, I've managed to put together a WhatsApp group, and now I'm getting to know the kids so well, and we're communicating, we're doing teaching on a little WhatsApp group, and which I would have never made such a great effort to get all these names on a WhatsApp group. They were all on SMS, and we've had people donate groceries for the kids and stuff like that, which they would have never sort of had that before. So I think there are different ways that one can make a good thing out of a bad thing. And I just encourage people to not focus on the negative. I know it's difficult, especially when you hear of terrible things that are happening and what people are suffering. But we must try and look at the good that can come out of something, you know.
Yeah. So Cathy, thanks so much for
Yeah,
being
pleasure.
on the show. I know you were very nervous to
Thank
start,
you. Thank you
but I
for-
know you did an amazing job. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much, Adam. Thank
And,
you.
yeah,
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
right. Look forward to chatting next time, and have a blessed week.